If you've been on TikTok or Reels recently, then you've probably seen a lot of this. Yes, we're at the point in history where Gen Z are romanticizing millennial culture. Key parts of these edits include things like scenes from the TV show Girls, the idea of working at BuzzFeed, the kind of twee fashion at the time, and a particular centered nature around New York or like living in Brooklyn in 2012. I also wanted to say, like, at the top of this, that obviously that it's a very, very rich, white, coastal elite type of millennial experience. Today, I wanted to just take a look at why we might be romanticizing that particular era of history, and also dive a little bit deeper into maybe what we're actually looking for as a society in this time of our lives. Nostalgia is a very, very important and pervasive part of humans' existence. We do tend to long for and romanticize other times. Usually those times are things that we've experienced in our own lives, like maybe a childhood holiday or being at school with your friends when you're no longer there anymore. This kind of generational nostalgia is a little bit different. In my exploration of nostalgia, I stumbled across this topic in r/millennial. Someone asked, didn't millennials back in the 90s and 2000s also say the exact same thing when they were romanticizing the 60s, 70s, and 80s? I was really interested in the comments around this. No, in my circles, we didn't romanticize previous decades at all. We liked a lot of their music, but that's hardly the same thing. Yeah, I think at most my group would have liked to briefly jump back to see a specific concert or band at their peak, but we were very happy to stay in the 90s and 2000s. Only a few people I knew romanticized past time periods, mainly the 50s, Victorian, and like the pirate age. Yeah, I don't recall any romanticism about prior generations. A couple of fashion trends came back from the 60s and 70s, and the music is honestly pretty timeless, but I didn't want to be one of those people or live their lives. There was just way too much exciting stuff happening in the world, and tech was exploding. Internet 2.0 had just come out. It was a really good time to be a kid and a teenager. I honestly can't say I blame Gen Z though. It looks like an incredibly difficult time to be a kid or teen right now. Someone responded, yeah, they don't really get to be kids. 11-year-olds are influencers now. It's very strange. You gotta have the new TikTok trend in the 3rd grade, but instead of slap bracelets and silly bands, it's $100 lip gloss or $60 cups. I just think it's really interesting because I guess in some sense, I assumed that other generations would always be harking back to the past. I think there's a difference between liking the fashion and music from an era like the 90s and maybe, you know, wanting to be at an early Radiohead concert compared to this like insatiable yearning for the past that Gen Z seem to have at the moment. My question really is, where does that yearning come from and what can we do about it? I think it ties a lot to the perceived hopefulness of the millennial era. I think people who experienced their 20s in the early 2010s seem to have this relentless optimism about them. And that might not actually be the case now, but it's certainly how it came across. It felt like a world of endless possibility. You worked hard, you got a job, you could get a creative job at BuzzFeed writing listicles or making video content in a brand new digital landscape. If you were in the States, you got to vote for Obama to be the first Black president of the United States. Even his slogan was hope. I think that undercurrent of hope is something that we really yearn for right now, and I think has kind of disappeared. Hindsight is definitely at play here. I don't think things were always optimistic and hopeful for the millennial generation, particularly that older generation who were entering the workforce at the time. Daisy Jones wrote for Vogue, I also find some of this nostalgia marginally depressing. It wasn't necessarily always fun for young people in the 2010s. House prices were skyrocketing, nightlife was on the decline. Many of the careers we were sold on would be close to irrelevant a mere 5 years later. I also picked up this interesting quote from Emily Maddock about the indie sleaze era, which she lived through. Sleaze, the clue's in the name. Although this moniker has been bestowed upon the era posthumously, there's no getting away from it. It was a sleazy, seedy, grubby, druggy, and dangerous time. It was also a horrendous time to be a woman in the public eye. The indie sleaze thing is so true. I feel like a lot of the imagery that we use to glamorize the era in the present day revolved around women that were having a famously difficult time existing as a famous woman in that space. The women of this era faced intense scrutiny from the media at the time. The early 2010s millennial period wasn't just getting coffees with your friends on your way to your joint BuzzFeed job. I want to circle back to nostalgia and unpack what it is we really miss about those particular eras, or not exactly miss because not everyone was there, but what we yearn for from those previous times. In, ironically, a BuzzFeed listicle from this year called 27 Cultural Things I Miss So Badly as a 36-year-old, here are some things that millennials themselves highlighted as things they missed. It's things like not feeling like you have to showcase and monetize every hobby, concerts with no phones, no need to text people all the time, early days of social media, the idea that everything felt possible and safe, critical thinking skills, attention spans, and non-smartphone life. It's crazy that all of this stuff happened not that long ago, but it really does feel like an alternate reality. And I feel like this is a thing because people don't really feel agency, freedom, or control in their lives right now in this society that we currently live in. It feels like we're too far gone socially and technologically to kind of take a step back and regroup. But I think all these things highlighted by those millennials in that BuzzFeed article are things we should be looking at as to why people feel that deep yearning for that time. We need to think about how in our personal lives, our friendships, and politically, we can push back against some of this and regain some of our freedom. I don't think Gen Z really wants to wake up in 2012 wearing an owl necklace and like put their bowler hat on and skip off to their like listicle job. Obviously, it's something deeper than that. In this Refinery 29 article, Alice Porter writes about being 23 and nostalgic for a fictional millennial existence. She says, "One of the biggest changes between my life now and the lives lived by millennials on these TV shows is just how widespread social media has become. You don't need me to tell you that it's completely changed the way we live our lives, but this is particularly true for my generation, which has grown up using social media." Social media was super different in the girls' era. Instagram had just come up and people were just posting like personal photos, like quirky, candid things. Influencers didn't really exist in the way that we have them now. Like it was pre their come up. We had some YouTubers who would develop into becoming influencers, but people weren't using Instagram in that way. It was a really exciting time to be on the internet because you could explore the internet, but you were not glued to your phone. Now it feels like if you were to log out, you're going to miss everything, your friends' lives, what's going on culturally, what's going on in the news. It's so tied to you. It's designed to be in the palm of your hand at all times. I think people are realizing that this is not good for us. But like most people are too phone addicted to really be able to do anything about it. Most of people's personal lives and friendships are too tied to their phones to do anything about it. I also feel like we know that social media is kind of past its peak in a way. It seems to be a marketplace of dead-eyed influencers, AI slop, and the occasional genuine creative person trying to make a difference. You are not nostalgic for the TV show Girls. You are nostalgic for regaining control of your brain. Put down CapCut, stop making those millennial edits, and get outside. Get outside and be whimsical. Get outside and be twee. Outside is right there. Outside is literally right there. Why should Jessa from Girls have a better attention span than you? Social media is literally selling off your brain to the highest bidder, and it's becoming more and more obvious that that's what it is, and I think that's why everyone is so depressed. We're in an era where your attention span is fuel for companies to try to extract. Like, if you want to be so millennial, find better ways to communicate with your friends. Close friends, tired. Sending your friends a newsletter? Tea. Something else that I feel makes people have that yearning feeling for millennial culture is kind of around spontaneity. People really enjoy the perceived spontaneity of the characters in TV shows like Girls. The idea that you can literally just bump into people and hang out with them. Or not even that, maybe actually just be able to see your friends on a regular basis, like a few times a week. It kind of feels foreign to a lot of people now. It also kind of ties into everything outside of our homes being super expensive and also a lack of third spaces for young people at the moment. Spontaneity feels more and more anxiety-inducing in our very insular culture right now, particularly in communities where people don't really talk to strangers or like strike up conversations with other people anymore, even in social settings. But also a really nice thing about London is the amount of people who are trying to start up like free clubs for people to join. Like chess clubs, book clubs, like a space for like-minded people that's low pressured where they can just go and hang out and meet someone new and discuss their hobbies. Millennials are brave and you aren't. You're gonna let a twee girl be more brave than you? You're gonna let a twee girl be more brave than you? Don't be shy, go to the chess club. Don't be shy, go to that event by yourself. I actually recently went to a Fashion Week event by myself because I could only get one ticket and I almost didn't want to go, and then I was like, God, it's Fashion Week. I went, and I can't lie, I was feeling a little overwhelmed and shy. But then someone came up to me and I was like, oh my God, we have so much in common. And we just chatted all night and it was incredible. There is definitely something in the world feeling more anxiety inducing and unsafe, but you do have to build a tolerance for being spontaneous and doing things on your own and putting yourself in new spaces. Like, what do you mean Shoshana has better social skills than you? Authenticity has a huge role to play here. When we look back on these eras, it feels like people were truly just being themselves. There was no social media panopticon, there was less performance for the eyes of a camera, and the fashion aesthetics of the time were way less manufactured. In a BBC article about Gen Z's fashion nostalgia specifically, designer Isabel Morant says, "Today's youth see the 2010s as the last gasp of freedom, before the era of constant digital surveillance and poreless AI filters. Today, everything is so polished, so fake. That's not rock and roll. It doesn't really appeal to me or my idea of what's sexy, certainly not what's cool." I do think we've lost our sense of selves a bit to the internet. There's a lot of people online trying to tell you what is cool, instead of you yourself going outside and figuring out what's cool through engaging in new hobbies, meeting new people, socializing. So many of these things, like social media, like finding out who you are, like engaging in more hobbies, are within your control. But I also don't want to say that all of this is easily fixed. Obviously, everyone's not unhappy because they're constantly on their phones. I'm just saying it doesn't help. But the real elephant in the room is that we live in a capitalist hellscape. It is safe to say that it feels like the end times right now. Economically, scary. Politically, terrifying. Socially, harrowing. Technologically, terrifying. But bad actors can also use nostalgia as a weapon. Sometimes I'll find one of these like 2000s or like millennial TikToks and the comments will be like, this was a simpler time before woke. Like woke ruined everything. And this hasn't come from nowhere. This is very, very common right-wing rhetoric. It's giving very much back in the day we got to be a little racist with it. This is also becoming a very pervasive issue when it comes to young people and these nostalgic things. Don't go down that pipeline. Instead, the one thing that we really, really, really should take away from previous generations is that feeling of hope. And not only the feeling of hope, but how to sustain hope. Societally and where we're at now, hope is the only thing that keeps us going. Nostalgia is political, hope is also political. It's our job to take the best of history, things like hope, collective action, human creativity, community, and make the world better. Run laps around the girls of girls, okay? Run laps around them. We cannot be down bad for twee. Write that down. And I'm done now, so get off your damn phone.